The next thing I'm going to talk about is the new Apple TV Plus series, Presumed Innocent, which is the second live action adaptation of Presumed Innocent. It's based on the best-selling 1987 debut novel from Scott Turow. That novel would go on to be adapted into a live action legal thriller in 1990, directed by Alan J. Pakula, who's a legendary filmmaker. He's made incredible films like All the President's Men, The Parallax View, Klutz, The Pelican Brief, just really, really phenomenal films. And the Presumed Innocent film in 1990 starred Harrison Ford, which is also, I think, a great legal thriller, definitely a really, really enjoyable film. And the movie was a hit with critics and audiences, and I think it still holds up. It's a really twisty, sharply written legal thriller. Some of the gender politics don't age the best, but overall, I think still a really good watch. So when I heard that they were going to do Presumed Innocent on Apple TV Plus, I'm like, why? What for? But here we are once again. Hollywood is thirsty for adaptations and remakes of things that have already been done and already work, because I'm thinking to myself, like, that Presumed Innocent movie, it's still really, really good. Like, if you watched it now, I think it still totally works. But this time, Presumed Innocent, the TV series, it's helmed by David E. Kelley, who is one of television's most prolific creators. He rose to prominence in the late 90s with Ally McBeal and other shows like Boston Legal. But in recent years, he's really made a stamp on the prestige TV era with Big Little Lies, The Undoing, and also a recent show on Netflix called A Man in Full, which I know quite a lot of people watched. But Presumed Innocent, because of that, it's exactly the type of show that Kelley would want to helm. It certainly speaks to his sensibilities. He's obviously done a lot of legal type of shows before. And like most of his outings, especially the recent ones, we basically have what's a central mystery that's surrounded by domestic and professional conflict. And it's basically following really affluent characters, in this case, big time lawyers. And they find their lives upended by a really, really upsetting act of violence. And here in Presumed Innocent, just like the other adaptations, we're following Rusty Savage, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who's making his first foray into television. That's also another thing that made me want to watch it. Gyllenhaal is one of my favorite actors, but he's playing Rusty Savage, the lead character, who becomes a prime suspect in the murder of his colleague, who he was also having an affair with. And Rusty essentially has to prove his innocence while also trying to keep his marriage together, because the fact that he was sleeping with the woman that was murdered, that he's also being accused of murdering, obviously that gets out. His wife, his family, he has 2 kids. That all gets thrown into disarray. And what I liked about this new show, ultimately, which I found to be pretty good, it's not great, but it's decent. But what I liked about it is that this time around, because we do have a little bit more runway, the female characters in this show are significantly more fleshed out. Most notably, Rusty Savage's wife, Barbara, who's played by Ruth Negga, who was great in this show. Bonnie Bedelia, who played Sarah, Barbara, in the original movie, she's criminally underwritten. Like, she barely has anything to do. But again, it's like the same premise. Like, Rusty is accused of having an affair, so on and so forth, but she doesn't have anything to do in that movie. But here, Ruth Negga gets a lot to do. It could have been a really thankless role that had a lot of cliches, but they don't do that. They develop her into a really complex, 3-dimensional character that's obviously hurt by this whole thing, the realization that she's married potentially to a monster, maybe even the world's worst husband. And also, like, her whole life is about to become a big tabloid. She's turned into 24/7 television infotainment. Her life is just fully on display, no privacy at all whatsoever. And she gets some really good speeches in the show. You can feel the weight, the pressure, the anguish that she's dealing with, the heartbreak. All of that stuff is really, really good. And I think, in addition to her, what was done really well was Peter Sarsgaard, who plays Tommy Malto, who is the prosecutor in the case. So he's going head to head with Jake Gyllenhaal, which is even more funny because Peter Sarsgaard and Jake Gyllenhaal are real life in-laws, because Peter Sarsgaard is married to Maggie Gyllenhaal, Jake Gyllenhaal's older sister. But they're going head to head here. He's amazing. Peter Sarsgaard is the best role in the show. The Tommy Malto character is amazing. He is just weaselly, schemish, slimy in all the best ways. He's so believable. He's willing to do anything to get over in this case, and he just turned out to be the most entertaining element of this particular show. And again, the Tommy Malto character in the original movie, fine, decent character, but not a ton to do. So the 8 episodes that they have does really work in his favor. But ultimately, I think with Presumed Innocent, even though it was 8 episodes, even though we get some new development with these these characters, I do still think that they stretched the story a little bit too thin. I still think that it works perfectly as a 2-hour legal thriller, and I think that the length of the show, the fact that it is 8 episodes, it kind of undermines the tension that you get with that original movie because there's just too much padding, and also there's several moments and incidents that happen on a week-to-week basis, like end of episode cliffhangers that are like really shocking and get you like in an oh my god state, like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens, and then they completely undo it at the beginning of the next episode. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, well, why did y'all do that? Why did you go to that drastic length to make it seem like this thing was going to be important, to just undo it and say like, no, absolutely, actually everything's okay. It's all good. And lastly, the most important thing is that the ending of this show takes a dramatically different approach than the ending of the source material. The book and the original 1990 movie, they have the same ending. This show, and a lot of people speculated this because it's like, why do this again if you're going to tell the same ending, does go to a different place than the book or the original movie does. And that was a curious element to it, but now that it's been revealed and the 8 episodes are wrapped up and we saw exactly what happened and who was responsible, it comes completely out of nowhere. It's so far left field. It's so ridiculous because they didn't earn the moment of the reveal. They don't do anything for the entire season to even hint that this was a possibility. I mean, if you were really sharp and you were just like throwing out a guess, you could probably guess like, oh, so-and-so probably did it, just because like that would be the most shocking shit. And you would perhaps be right, but sometimes the most shocking shit isn't the best thing to do. And I think that they went with a really shocking conclusion here, and it didn't really work for me. I just didn't like it. I think that it just doesn't feel earned. But Apple did greenlight a season 2, which is also peculiar because the story's over. It's wrapped up. Okay. It's also their most viewed drama ever. It surpassed Idris Elba's Hijack, which came out last year. Decent show. But now with season 2, I'm just wondering if they're going to do a new story entirely, or if they're going to continue to just follow the Savage family, which would still be new territory because there's not really source material for that. Either way, I'm very dubious of the decision. My personal preference, just tell a new story, do anthology style. But, I think it's interesting we're in this day and age where we're greenlighting these series and we're promoting them as legal or as limited series, but that's just not the case. Like Hijack did the same thing. It was promoted as a limited series. That's getting a season 2. Shogun, we just saw that same thing happen. Turns out these companies are like, oh shit, wait, that was super successful. We should probably do that again. And that's where we are. But I would say if you want a superior legal thriller on Apple TV Plus, I would actually recommend Defending Jacob, starring Chris Evans. That came out kind of at the launch of Apple TV Plus, like I think 2020. That's also based on a novel, but I found that to be really, really good. I thought that was a lot better than this one. This one was just okay. But again, Jake Gyllenhaal, the source material had me interested, but it just panned out to be a decent and fine show.
Man, these cash grabs, sick of it, man. Sick of it. Like, how can we take something old and recontextualize? That's what everybody is doing. It's the hotness on the street, man. Especially, it's like, let's come up with a new ending that doesn't work in general. Yeah, we gotta stop it, man. And it's funny because you say that same concept is like, oh, we're a limited series. Oh, but it went so good. Let's try this again. But instead of the again should be another limited series that's good, not another season. And that's the frustrating part. It's like, let's just come up with another limited series that's good. Like, y'all just,
at the very least, yeah, that should be.
They missed the point. It's like it goes over their head. It's like, y'all legit missed the point. So yeah. I still might check it out because Presumed Innocence is like, I don't know, it's interesting. I'll probably, yeah, we'll see.